The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson wasn't just a late-night show, it was a cultural phenomenon for 3 decades. It captivated audiences and cemented Johnny Carson as a television legend. A list stars like Joan Rivers and Wayne Newton graced the stage, delivering unforgettable moments that kept viewers coming back for more. But behind the laughter and charm, not everything was as polished as it seemed. Carson's infamous temper sometimes spilled over, creating backstage drama that occasionally made its way into the public eye. In one particularly shocking incident, a guest pushed things too far, earning a lifetime ban from the show for crossing the line. Even the king of late night couldn't ignore from humble beginnings to global stardom. John William Carson, born on October 23rd, 1925 in Corning, Iowa, grew up in small Midwestern towns before his family settled in Norfolk, Nebraska. Even as a child, Carson showed a knack for entertainment. A chance discovery of a book on magic at age 12 ignited his passion for performance, and before long, he was astonishing family members with card tricks. His mother, recognizing his enthusiasm, sweat him a cape, and by age 14, he was performing as the Great Carson, earning a modest $3 per show. Carson's early ambition and sense of adventure led him to Hollywood after high school, though his journey took an unexpected turn when he was fined $50 for impersonating a midshipman. The story, often retold, only added to his legend. In 1943, he joined the U.S. Navy during World War II, training as an officer under the V-12 Navy College Program, commissioned as an ensign. He served aboard the USS Pennsylvania, where he was responsible for decoding encrypted messages. Surprisingly, his military career also included an undefeated 151 record in amateur boxing, with most of his matches taking place on the ship. One of Carson's most memorable moments in the Navy came when he performed a magic trick for Secretary of the Navy James Verforstall. When asked if he planned to stay in the Navy, Carson replied that he intended to become a magician. Forstall challenged him to prove his skills, and Carr's quick-witted performance left an impression. It was a one that confirmed his ability to entertain even the most serious of audiences. After the war, Carson seized the educational benefits offered by the military, enrolling at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Initially majoring in journalism with dreams of becoming a comedy writer, he soon shifted to speech and drama. Realizing his true calling was radio, his college thesis, How to Write Comedy for Radio, showcased his analytical approach to humor, featuring tape skits and explanations of comedic techniques. The project allowed him to graduate in just 3 years with a degree in radio and speech, along with a minor in physics. Carson's early broadcasting career took off in 1950 when he joined WOW-AM and WOW TV in Omaha, Nebraska. His morning television program, The Squirrel's Nest, showcased his sharp wit and penchant for satire. One standout segment involved interviewing pigeons on the courthouse roof, humorously exposing local political corruption. His ability to blend comedy with current events set him apart, and he soon found himself hosting local events, rubbing shoulders with some of the very figures he lampooned on air. A fortunate connection through the wife of a spoof politician, L.E.D. Carson, to Los Angeles in 1951, where he landed a role at KXD, a CBS-owned television station. There he launched Carson Cellar. 1951 to 1953, a low-budget but cleverly written sketch comedy show that caught the attention of established comedians. Among his admirers was Red Skelton, who hired Carson as a writer. In 1953, Carson's big break came unexpectedly the following year, when Skelton knocked himself unconscious just before a live broadcast. Stepping in at the last minute, Carson proved his ability to think on his feet and entertain an audience under pressure. Jack Benny, another comedy legend, recognized Carson's talent and invited him onto his show. In 1955, Carson, imitating Benny's mannerisms, jokingly accused a veteran comedian of copying him, a moment Benny later recalled when predicting Carson's bright future in comedy. Throughout the 1950s, Carson hosted multiple shows, including the game show Earn Your Vacation 1954 and a variety program, The Johnny Carson Show. The career-changing show in the early 1960s, late-night television was still finding its footing. NBC's Tonight Show had launched in 1954 with Steve Allen, a sharp-witted host who set the foundation for what would become the quintessential American talk show. When Allen left in 1957, Jack Parr took the reins, bringing a more personal and sometimes unpredictable style to the program. By 1962, however, Tonight needed a new host, and NBC had its eyes on a rising star. Johnny Carson. Carson had already made a name for himself on Who Do You Trust, where his humor and charm made him one of television's most sought-after personalities. Yet, when NBC first offered him the job, he hesitated. The idea of filling 105 minutes every night interviewing celebrities and keeping the nation entertained seemed daunting. Legendary figures like Bob Newhart, Jackie Gleason, Groucho Marx, and Joey Bishop had already turned down the role. But as NBC persisted, Carson finally gave in, signing on in early 1962. With 6 months left on his ABC contract, Carson couldn't take over immediately. Instead, a rotating cast of guest hosts, including Marks M.V. Griffin, Jerry Lewis, and Donald O'Connor, kept Tonight running until Carson made his long-awaited debut on October 1st, 1962. At first, the transition wasn't easy. Carson had doubts about his ability to carry the show, and his first year was filled with growing pains. But as he settled into the role, he began to redefine late-night television, blending humor, WI, and a keen ability to make even the dullest guests shine. Billy Wilder once said of Carson, "By the simple law of survival, Carson is the best. He enchants the invalids and the insomniacs, as well as the people who are to get up at dawn. He is the Valium and the noodle of a nation. No matter what kind of dead asses are on the show, he has to make them funny and exciting. He has to be their nurse and their surgeon every night in front of millions of people. He has to do the salto mortale. What's more, he does it without a net." Carson wasn't just hosting a show, he was shaping an institution. When The Tonight Show launched under his leadership, it took on a refined structure that would set the standard for late-night television. Ed McMahon, Carson's longtime partner from Who Do You Trust, joined as his announcer and sidekick, delivering the now iconic introduction. Here's Johnny S.K. Henderson led the NBC orchestra, providing musical interludes that gave the show a distinctive rhythm. Carson's monologue, a nightly ritual, opened each show with sharp topical humor. If a joke fell flat, he had a knack for recovering with a self-deprecating quip. One of his go-to moves was a playful soft shoe dance to T for 2, cued by the band, which instantly turned a misfire into a laugh. Another trick was pulling the microphone close and deadpanning attention. Kmart shoppers clean up an aisle, for his effortless charm and ability to improvise made even awkward moments feel entertaining. A signature of Carson's monologue was his phantom golf swing, a small, relaxed gesture that became an endearing trademark. Guest hosts would occasionally parody Bob Newhart, for instance, once minded rolling a bowling ball. Instead, the show's theme music, Johnny's theme, was composed by Paul Anka, adapted from his earlier song Toot Sight. Before taking over The Tonight Show, Carson wrote lyrics for it, though they were never used, which entitled him to 50% of performance royalties. That theme remained unchanged from Carson's first show in 1962 to his farewell broadcast on May 22nd. 1992, originally filmed at NBC's headquarters in New York's 30 Rock Roller Plaza. The Tonight Show made a major move on May 1st, 1972, relocating to Burbank, California. The shift placed the show closer to Hollywood, making it easier to book top-tier celebrity guests. As Carson's influence grew, so did his control over the format. In 1980, he cut back his hosting duties to 4 nights per week, leaving Mondays to a rotating roster. Guest hosts episodes were recorded in Burbank at 5:30 p.m. and fed via satellite to the Eastern and Central time zones at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Pacific time viewers received a later feed at 11:30 p.m. their time. By the late 1970s, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, was more than just a late-night program. It was a cornerstone of American television. Carson's influence on comedy, celebrity culture, and broadcasting was undeniable, and his impact extended far beyond the studio. In April 1979, after 17 years as the face of The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson sent shockwaves through the industry by announcing his departure. At the time, the show was more than just a late-night staple. It was a financial powerhouse, generating an estimated 177% of NBC's pre-tax profits. His immense value to the network sparked swift negotiations, and by May 1980, he agreed to a new 3-year deal that redefined both his role and the show itself. The runtime was trimmed from 90 minutes to 60, and Carson himself reduced his hosting duties to just 3 nights a week, a shift that extended Tom Snyder's Tomorrow by 30 minutes to fill the gap. Yet even with a lighter schedule, Carson remained television's biggest star. To accommodate his reduced presence, NBC introduced a lineup of guest hosts, with Joan Rivers serving as a permanent guest host from 1983 to 1986. When she left, the show returned to rotating guest hosts featuring comedy heavyweights like George Carlin and Gary Shandling. By 1980, Jay Leno secured the role, exclusively leveraging his willingness to keep his fee low for more. Bookings as Carson continued scaling back NBC kept audiences engaged with the best of Carson on Tuesdays airing classic reruns that highlighted his timeless appeal despite working fewer hours. Carson's influence and earnings only grew by the mid-1970s. He was the highest-paid television personality, bringing in an astonishing $4 million per year, equivalent to nearly $1.193 million. Today, Hollywood came calling, offering him major film roles, but he repeatedly turned them down. He passed on the Thomas Crown Affair, leaving the part to Steve McQueen, and declined a role in Blazing Saddles, which went to Gene Wilder. Even Martin Scorsese personally approached him for The King of Comedy, offering him a role opposite Robert De Niro, but Carson walked away, and the part ultimately went to Jerry Lewis. Carson's legacy was solidified in 1987, when he was honored with a Peabody Award marking his 25th anniversary on The Tonight Show. The board's praise captured his impact, an American institution, a household word, and the most widely quoted American. Even as the schedule shrank, his presence loomed larger than ever, cementing his place as a legend in television and comedy. Celebs who have been banned from The Tonight Show for decades. The Tonight Show wasn't just a talk show, it was the ultimate gatekeeper of Hollywood success. If you made it onto Johnny Carson's stage, your career could skyrocket overnight. But what if you crossed Johnny? You might as well start packing your bags for obscurity. Carson took Rivers's departure personally and cut ties with her professionally. She wasn't just a guest, she was practically family, and maybe something more, a frequent guest host. She credited Carson for her rise to stardom. Their chemistry was undeniable there. Banter effortless, but in 1986, Rivers made a career-killing move. She accepted a late-night show at Fox without telling Johnny first. When Carson found out, he was furious. Not only did he ban Joan from The Tonight Show, a punishment that lasted until Jimmy Fallon lifted the ban in 2014, but he made sure anyone who appeared on her show would never be welcome on his. But here's where it gets even juicier. Rumors swirled that Rivers and Carson had an affair. Could this ban have been more than just a business fallout? Some speculated that Rivers' department may have affected Carson on a personal level, though no concrete evidence of a deeper relationship exists for a rising comedian or actor that was social suicide. Rivers later admitted that she tried to mend fences, but Carson never spoke to her again, not once before his death in 2005. And Rivers wasn't the only one who felt Carson's wrath. Rich Little, the master impressionist who could mimic anyone, was once a Tonight Show staple. He was so good at impersonating Carson that he did it everywhere, at clubs, at award shows, and even on The Tonight Show itself. At first, Carson laughed along, but behind the scenes, he hated it. By 1982, Lil was gone. His invitations suddenly dried up. He later claimed that Carson banned him for mocking him too much, though Carson's producers insisted it was because his act got stale, or not. The message was clear: make fun of Johnny Carson too many times, and you disappear. Years later, Little got the last laugh. He portrayed Carson in HBO's The Late Shift, a film that aired out all the dirty drama of The Tonight Show succession battle. But by then, Carson's iron grip had already made his mark. One thing was for sure: crossing, being banned from The Tonight Show, could certainly impact a comedian's career. But many still found success through other platforms, and The Tonight Show has seen its fair share of guests who definitely crossed that line. Bobcat Goldthwait, playing with fire. Literally, when someone says they're on fire during an interview, it's usually just a metaphor, unless you're Bobcat Goldthwait. On May 9th, 1990, for the eccentric comedian decided to literally set his chair ablaze during a live taping of The Tonight Show. The audience shocked the producers, freaking out Jay Leno, probably rethinking his entire career choice. This wasn't some pre-planned stunt. It was pure Goldthwait chaos. Security swarmed, and after the flames were put out, so was Bobcat's Tonight Show career. He was arrested, fined $2,700, and narrowly avoided actual jail time by agreeing to do PSAs about fire safety. Because nothing says responsible role model like lighting talk show furniture on fire. Leno, ever to sport, allowed Bobcat to make a brief cameo later as a man buried in dirt. Message received. When Jay Leno first took over The Tonight Show in 1992, Howard Stern was actually one of his biggest offenders, but in 1995, Stern showed up ready to burn every bridge in sight, flanked by two bikini-clad models. Stern had them engage in some very NSFW antics, too wild, even for late-night TV. The moment things got really out of hand, Leno didn't just sit there and fake a smile. He straight up walked off the stage. Stern's more explicit moments were edited out of the broadcast. And just like that, his Tonight Show days were over. Stern never want to let a grudge go. Trash Leno for years afterward. Eventually, the two made peace, but their late night Relationship was dead on her rival, Kathy Griffin, doesn't just get banned, she collects bands like their trophies. Leno was a fan of her uncensored brand of K, which often involved wild tangents and a seriously filthy mouth. But Griffin didn't just get herself banned on The Tonight Show. She got the boot from multiple late-night shows. Her most infamous moment, getting banned from The Late Show with David Letterman, making a triumphant return, and then stripping down to her underwear on live TV. Leno never won for unpredictability. Didn't even consider giving her a second chance. Griffin, of course, loved the controversy. Ho Mandel, a 12-foot mistake. Some bands come from outrageous behavior, others just from really bad comedy. Ho Mandel was not a troublemaker. In fact, he was a Tonight Show favorite, racking up 21 successful appearances. But on his 22nd visit, he made one fatal mistake. He brought a 12T saber-toothed tiger prop. Sounds weird. The bit was clunky. The logistics were a disaster. And worst of all, Carson wasn't on it. If there was one thing Johnny Carson hated, it was a guest pulling a stunt without warning him first. The result, a painfully awkward segment that completely bombed, and Carson, never W to fake enthusiasm, made it clear he was not amused. That was just the last time Mandel was ever booked on The Tonight Show. While Mandel bounced back with successful career, he probably still cringes thinking about that 12-foot tiger. Moral of the story, don't mess with late-night hosts. If there's one thing these stories prove, it's that talk show hosts have long memories. And if you really mess up, you're not just losing a gig, you're losing an entire career opportunity.